So what you read is true. I really did eat 250 meals with strangers. I got to tell you the story and of course, tell you how transformative that experience was for me and what I learned from it and through it. Let's go. Welcome back to another accidentally intentional episode where we're on a mission to destroy loneliness by building rich, meaningful friendships. And honestly, this is what started it all for me because in college, I had one friend, one best friend, and that was basically it. I knew that I had a ride or die, and so I wasn't really interested in becoming friends with anyone else, to be quite frank. And that was until one day I had a best friend breakup. Now, guys might be like, what the heck are you talking about? But girls can know just how crazy a best friend breakup can be. It was horrible because this was, just as I said, my ride or die. So I went from having one friend to, of course, zero friends. I fell into a bout of depression. I had no hope. I had no desire to honestly do anything in life. That was until my sophomore year of college, where I had a New Year's resolution that I forced myself to make and stick to. And the New Year's resolution was this: eat a meal with someone different on my college campus every single day and get to know their story. Now, considering I'm someone who I can appear extroverted, but honestly, I'm not. I'm more of an introvert. This was going to be the bane of my existence when it comes to New Year's resolutions. Because I set a pretty aggressive one. And the goal was to do this for a full year, see how far I could go. But it ended up being such a transformative experience that I ended up continuing this until I graduated. So I did this practice for about 2 years. And so in that time frame, I ate 250 meals with honestly strangers on my college campus. Now you might be thinking, what do you mean strangers? Like they're on your college campus? No, that's it. I literally maybe knew their name, and that's how it would start. It was so crazy, and it was so awkward because, for instance, it would go something like this. There'd be someone sitting next to me in one of my classes. Her name was Erica, and I said, Erica, I see you all the time. I love how you dress, like love the fashion, but that's honestly all I know about you. Would you want to grab lunch sometime? Like, you're probably cringing. It's so awkward, but that's how it started for me because I was like, I have to do this no matter how awkward it feels. And it was honestly the worst at first because it felt like I was pulling teeth. I was so nervous. I was like, what questions am I going to ask people? I wish I had, like cue cards. I wish honestly that back in college, I had the Party Cues app, which is the #1 questions app, which is free in the App Store right now. But it was the craziest experience of my life because the more I continued to do it rather, it got easier. And I became more comfortable talking to strangers and building and fostering deep connections out of seemingly nowhere over an hour or two lunch. So it was an amazing experience, and I'm going to tell you 10 things that I learned from it. The first thing I learned was that any friendship of substance, meaning not an acquaintance, one where you actually feel there's a meaningful, impactful connection, it requires vulnerability, which means that oftentimes you have to go first and be vulnerable first. I heard this quote recently, and it says that by being vulnerable, you are giving people the gift of going second. And I think that's beautiful because there's this other quote by C.S. Lewis that says, friendship is born at the moment when one man says to another, what? You too? And I was like, wow, that's beautiful because the stats are telling us that 70% of the country is lonely. 30% of the country doesn't actually feel like they've ever had a meaningful conversation or connection in their entire life. So we got to do something to fix it, right? And so that's why if you're secretly lonely, this is the perfect video for you to watch, because I know how it feels, and I was you. Another thing I learned was that even if we're hiding or trying to blend in, we all desperately want to be seen. Like we want to be known. You know what I'm saying? Saying someone's name or one thing that you notice about them, such as the Erica example I gave, something that you want to learn about them, is an incredible bridge to connection. And even if it's speaking to something that you think you've observed about a person, I found that that was one of the best ways to start a dialogue, which could turn into having coffee or lunch or dinner together. I learned this kind of method, and it wasn't intentional. It was kind of just an overflow of where my heart was. Like, if I knew someone's name, I'd say their name and say, hey, honestly, all I know about you is your name, but I'd love to know more. Would you be willing to? And can I tell you something? Not a single person ever said, ew, no, get away. You're so weird. Even though it probably felt extremely weird, because I kind of was weird. It's okay. It's okay. The whole process is awkward. In fact, I had a small group one time, and I opened the small group by saying, who in the room feels awkward when meeting new people? Every single hand in the room went up. Okay, so maybe it's not us actually being awkward, but the experience of talking to someone for the first time is, in fact, awkward. And if you're listening to this right now and you're like, well, okay, that's cool that you were able to do this in college where there was literally everybody your age around you, to that I would say it's still possible today. And as adults, we can still make friends. Let me give you an example of how this could go down. And yes, it's going to take some courage and risk of being awkward, but that's okay, because you're worth that. So let's say that I'm in a coffee shop and I'm sitting down next to someone and seeing that they're grabbing coffee or eating a meal while doing some work. And if they don't have headphones in, I might just strike up a small conversation with them and be like, what kind of work do you do? And based on how that goes, I'll know whether I should continue a dialogue. Because some people can get caught off guard by the fact that someone's interested in knowing what they do. But they could say, oh, I'm a software engineer. Oh, amazing. I'd actually love to hear more about that, because I don't know anything about it, but I have friends that do it. Would you be willing to grab coffee with me one day next week so I could hear about what makes someone successful as a software engineer? And they could be like, sure. And then you say, okay, great. Let's grab our calendars. Let's pencil it in. And you might be like, oh my God, that's so aggressive. Okay. And if they're like, actually, no, I'm good. You can be like, okay, well, hey, great meeting you. And that's that. All of relationships, all of friendships are a risk, but it's a risk worth fighting for. And along with that, tying both of those concepts together, vulnerability and kind of going first, when you're giving a slice of vulnerability and asking for input from a stranger, it builds an instant connection. So you'll notice that in that fake conversation that I had with a software engineer, I said, what makes you successful at something? People want to feel a sense of connection. And when you ask for their advice on something, it creates kind of a sense of buy-in, I guess, too, where they're invested in that conversation because they want to see somebody else succeed in the same way. We want to feel like we're contributing. That's just a fact. All of us humans want to feel like we are contributing to something. That's extremely rewarding and fulfilling. You think about people today who hate their jobs. Well, one of the reasons why they hate their jobs is because they feel like they're just a cog in a wheel, just a number. They're not really contributing to something meaningful. And so creating these bridges to connection is a perfect way to do that. Another thing that I learned through this process is just how valuable doing what you say you're going to do is. Make the plans, show up, follow up afterwards. I mean, you learn so much about somebody if you just stay quiet long enough to listen. And in fact, we've talked about it in other episodes, the longer that you stay quiet, the more someone will share. Because we're in a society where nobody's giving each other the time of day. And so it's actually a really beautiful moment when someone is just intently nodding their head and listening and letting some awkward silence maybe go by. And then if you're on the other end where you're sharing something, you're caught off guard, you're like, yeah, and actually, you know what? And you start talking more because you just feel so valued that someone is listening to you. And so doing what you say you're going to do definitely means not ghosting people that you said that you're going to hang out with. And that's why scheduling it in the calendar is a sign and a behavior that's showing them, hey, like this does mean something to me. I'm going to make it a priority. And why is that important? Because we all want friends in our life who do the same, who do what they say they're going to do. And so why not give people that gift of knowing that you're going to be that too? And I said, follow up. You know, for instance, let's say you're talking to somebody and they're sharing how they're really nervous because next week they have a job interview or something, or something's happening in their life. Why not put that in your back pocket of your mind and follow up the next week? Say, hey, how did it go? I was just thinking about that. Or I was just thinking about you. That could be so amazing for somebody to hear. Another thing I learned through this was that we truly are one question away from getting to know other people. My favorite question that I routinely asked people during these meal dates, as I called them, to make new friends was, what is your biggest passion? Because you saw someone just instantly light up at what sets their soul on fire, talking about it. And I mean, I heard some of the craziest things that made people passionate. And they may not be for me, but that's okay, because how cool that I'm watching someone be so passionate in a pursuit about something that they want for their life or to help the world, etc. And I say we're one question away from building deep connections because, you know, as I said at the beginning of the video, I was in a season of depression as I started doing this. So I wasn't like the cheeriest person, but I wanted to be an intentional person. And I wanted to first be the friend that I wanted in my life. And so one of the questions that I would ask people as the conversation kind of continued and we got to know each other a little bit more, I would be vulnerable and say, like, I'm honestly kind of struggling in my life right now. And so I want to know, has there been a time in your life where you just couldn't see the other side? You didn't think you'd make it through it, but then you did. And if so, what helped you get there? What pulled you through? Now, this ended up being an incredible connection point, I found out, because now I shared something about myself. People want to share their experience, and now they also want to see me get through what I was facing. So knowing that, hey, we could very well be just one question away from deep connection with people. And yes, it's 1,000 small questions, right, that continue to build connection, but we're one question away from getting in the right direction. Another thing I learned was that you can find something in common with literally anybody on earth. I mean, well, if you just think about it at face value, we are all living and breathing in the very same moment in history. So that's something we're sharing in common. What we've all faced the past couple years, we've faced together at the same time. And even feeling awkward can be a commonality that you share with someone. It doesn't need to be like, oh, well, they like hiking and I don't like that. And, you know, they're a finance person and I'm a marketing person. You know, who cares? We can all find something in common with somebody else if we're willing to look for it. And at the same time, you can also address differences and how much you appreciate them. For instance, seeing someone just walk with complete confidence, just saying to that person, hey, I feel that you have so much confidence. And I really admire that because that's something I want to grow in. Man, what a gift of a compliment and encouragement for somebody. And you're finding something and with that, you're finding something in common because you want to be more confident too. And even that can be something that turns into a sit-down conversation to get to know each other more. So in all these things, we're talking about how vulnerability is a through line, going first is a through line. And I would say that being someone who looks for ways to encourage or compliment other people is huge too. Like genuinely, if anybody walked by me and I was like, man, I want to get to know that person better, I could find something about them to compliment. Now it's not just a weird thing of like, hey, I'm lonely. Would you be my friend? You know, I don't even need to say that. I could tell him I'm lonely, but it could go something like this. Hey, I love your sneakers. Jordan 1s, they are my favorite. You know, like I actually was just thinking about buying this pair. I would love to talk to you more about this. And quite honestly, I want to make more friends in my life. And I feel like because we both have that love for Jordan 1s, we'd be friends. Would you be willing to grab lunch with me? That may have felt awkward to you. I mean, I'll tell you, it felt awkward for me, but it's still okay. The whole process is awkward and that's okay. How many times should I say this to drive it home in this episode? You might be watching this video or listening to this episode thinking to yourself, man, I really like where we're going with this, but ultimately I don't really know where to even start when it comes to building rich friendships or getting out of my rut of loneliness. And if that's you, I got you. Because now we have a free downloadable guide, which is the 5 steps you need to build rich friendships. It's the springboard that launches you into every other facet of your life in your own mission to destroy your loneliness. It's the exact steps that I, along with now hundreds of others, have used to destroy their loneliness and build the friendships that they've always dreamed of and always wanted. And now it could be your turn too. So make sure you check out the link in the description or the show notes to download that guide for free right now. 5 steps to build rich friendships. Hey, by the way, I think you're worth it. Back to the show. And the next thing I learned through this, which I kind of alluded to earlier, but expecting other people to be a good friend to me when I wasn't already embodying a good friend was, that's not fair to anybody, quite frankly, because then we're setting expectations for other people that we ourselves won't hold to. And yeah, nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. Nobody likes that. Nobody's looking for that. So through this whole process, I really learned what I needed to do first before anything else was become a great friend. And that means something different to everybody. But I think that at the end of the day, there's certain characteristics across the board that everybody wants. Everybody wants to feel known, loved, seen, safe to share things. That's why people want ride or dies. That means they know everything about me, good, bad, ugly, they're still gonna ride with me. And I would say a final thing that I learned was that a genuine smile and looking someone in the eyes has an incredibly powerful impact. It has a huge impact again because most of us are eyes glued to our phone all day long, trying to communicate with people via text, through social media, instead of actually being present with the people that are right in front of us. And so don't be afraid to smile at someone and make eye contact. Yes, eye contact is hard to do sometimes, and I'm not saying like death stare, that's so weird, but genuinely seeing people physically so that eventually they can feel safe enough and vice versa to be seen with their heart and fully. And speaking of that, there's a lot of body language cues, social cues that you can give that will make you feel less awkward and also make you come across as less awkward too. So if you want to check out that video, click this right here. And can't wait for the next episode because we're going to be discussing all the things you need to do in order to make friends as an adult in the next 90 days. So make sure you subscribe to get that next episode in the next 2 weeks. Until then, we'll see you later.